Hey, what's going on, y'all? It's Jay Myrax of UltraWest.com. So, as a follow-up to my previous video about audio interfaces for the MPC, I also want to talk about different external equipment that you should be using with the MPC. So, I'm using a 4000 in here, but don't get stuck on the model because a lot of the stuff I'm talking about is not just applicable to the 4000, but it's applicable to all MPCs, mostly in the standalone domain, but some of this stuff would even apply to using something like a Renaissance or a Touch or anything like that. So just pay attention to the workflow. Hopefully I can give some advice and wisdom that helps you out along the way and allows you to open up some new ideas and possibilities in your studio in terms of workflow. So a little bit about my setup. Like in the previous video, I said you have to have an audio interface, and the reason I believe that is because an audio interface will act as the hub of your studio. I'm using an Apollo Quad, which is like the hub for me. That's where I get all the audio in and out of my MPCs and other devices in the studio. So it really is crucial that I have an audio interface that allows me to do all the audio routing. And the Apollo Quad also comes with console software, which is its own software that allows you to do some routing and effects processing and all the nice setups that allow you to get cool recordings through the Apollo. Now, you don't have to have an Apollo, but even if you don't have the Apollo, you can still do a lot of the workflows I'm going to show, just because you can use your DAW as a audio processor instead of, say, the Apollo console software. But just keep in mind that, different devices and different software is going to give you different possibilities. So you might even get inspired to maybe use an Apollo at some point. So I'm also using the Empirical Labs Mike-e, which is a solid state microphone preamp. It's pretty nice for everything from vocals to bass guitars and drums and you name it. It's a pretty good preamp. That's going directly into my Apollo, and I use that for sampling a lot of sources. You should have some type of preamp, even if it's the built-in preamps on your interface. You want to have some type of preamp because if you're going to be sampling or using a sampler, you'll definitely want to be able to record stuff from the real world. Now, a lot of people sample from records, and nowadays people are sampling from YouTube, but nothing beats being able to record your own samples from the real world anytime you want to. And I'll show you some examples of how I do that and how I integrate, a microphone and recording real samples into the MPC as well. So that's a little bit about my setup. So far we got audio interface, we got mic preamp, and we also have a mic. I use a really simple mic for a lot of sampling. It's the Shure SM57. I have it pretty close to me in my workflow because whenever I get inspired, if I want to hum into it or if I want to clap into it or record something else, it's just right there. Makes it really convenient and easy. So that's a little bit about the setup that I'm using. Let me show you some of the workflow. So a lot of times if I'm wanting to record stuff like claps or anything like that, I'll just go to the sampler on my MPC here, and then we'll use the Apollo software to do the audio routing. So in this case, my MPC output is connected to channel 1 and 2. And you can see this, like when I hit the metronome on the MPC, you can see the activity there. So, and everything is muted, by the way, because I don't want to get feedback. That's a really important thing. If you're using a microphone, you want to make sure that your monitors are turned off. Otherwise, you'll find out. If you forget, you'll find out. But you usually want to turn your monitors off when you're using a microphone. I usually monitor with headphones a lot of times when I'm recording stuff, just to keep things, really safe, because otherwise you can have some issues, mess up your speakers. So you can see the activity on the console software. So 1 and 2 are my MPC, and then you see another one that's labeled Mike-e, and that's actually responding to when I talking to the microphone. So you can see it on the actual interface as well on the console software. And if you look on the outputs, the output is set to line 3 on the Mike-e channel. And the reason it's set like that is because the Mike-e is connected to the Apollo, but then what I want to do is once I record into the Apollo, I want to send the resulting signal, the affected signal, back to the MPC for sampling. So my MPC sampler has its physical recording or sampling inputs connected to the physical outputs 3 and 4 on my Apollo quad. And that allows me to have that connection so that anytime I want to send something from the computer into the MPC, I can just designate that they go out of 3 and 4 and just shoot the audio there, and it makes it really easy. What we're going to do now, just for an example, is let's record some claps. That's a real easy thing. If you don't have any other percussion, you got clap, you got hands, you can clap. So let's get to that. So I'm going 3 and 4 on the Apollo, and then on my MPC, I have my source set to the analog inputs, and then my I'm actually just going to record the right side since I'm recording a mono signal using one microphone. And then just get a quick level test. Looks good. I'm going to record now, so I'm going to hit record on the MPC. And let's stop that, and let's keep the sample. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the recording chain now. So since I'm using the Apollo quad, I have access to some cool effects like the Studer A800 and the Neve channel strip. So if we look at my Mike-e channel here, my Mike-e channel strip has the Studer A800. It's kind of like a tape emulator, and I have a little bit of input drive on it just to get a little bit of saturation. So now we're just going to listen to the clap that I just recorded. So that's just a solo clap that I recorded. I mean, it's a pretty no-nonsense clap for the most part, but I may use that as a starting point when I'm working in the MPC. If I want to add some effects that the MPC doesn't have, there's some ways that I can do that now. Now, I showed you the way I would do it through the Apollo. We put the A800 tape emulation on it. But say, for example, I wanted to add like a reverb to the clap or something like that. The MPC 4000 doesn't have really good reverb in my opinion, and I don't really have reverb effects on the Apollo, but I do have plenty of reverbs that I can use inside of my DAW. So let's just go to Logic. Logic is my DAW of choice right now. Sometimes I actually use Machine as well for effects processing, depending on how I want to work. Right now we're going to use Logic because I would think most people would have a DAW, but it is common practice also for people to use samplers as external effects processors for MPC. So some people would use like a SP404 or SP505. I use Machine sometimes, but we're going to use Logic. It gets the same thing done. It's kind of like the same workflow and the same concept overall. So got my clap here. Let's go to Logic now. And I'm going to mute my channel on the console software. And now I'm going to unmute my Logic channel strip. And let's record enable it. Just something real simple. If I put Space Designer Stereo, if I put it as a insert, already got some reverb action. Cool. So that's a cool clap for me. What I'll do is just record it into Logic real quick. Turn the metronome off because I don't need it right now, and just record into Logic. So now, if we go back to Logic, I have these 3 claps. At this point, I have the reverb on it the way I want. What I'll do now is I'll take the record enable off in Logic Pro, and I'm actually going to go back to my console software for a second. The thing about the console software is that it only allows me to send out of one output per application. So if I'm sending out on 3.4 on my console app, I can't send out 3.4 in Logic as well. So I'm actually just going to make sure that I go back to monitor so that I have freed up this hardware channel for Logic. So in Logic now, I'm going to go to the output, and right now it's set to stereo out, but I'm going to go to output 5 and 6. And output 5 and 6 in Logic actually corresponds to output 3 and 4 on my hardware interface. So I just know that because that's how my setup is hooked up. Your setup could be hooked up a little bit differently, but in general, Logic can see all of the outputs on your interface. So you would just select the output that your MPC is connected to physically, and in that way you can get signal from Logic directly into the MPC. So since I have it hooked up on 5 and 6 in Logic, let's go back to record mode on the MPC. And now since I've applied a reverb, I'm actually going to record back into the MPC stereo instead of mono, because the clap was mono when I recorded it, but once you put a spatial effect like a reverb or a delay, you may have some type of space, like some stereo imaging that you want to account for now. So it's better to record in stereo than in mono. So I'm going to go back to stereo on the MPC and just get a test signal real quick from Logic. Looks good. So now I'm going to go ahead and record the claps into the MPC. So I'm recording. Boom. So I got them now. They're in the MPC. Let's unmute the channel in the console software, and then let's preview the sample that we recorded. Here we go. So that's cool. I got that sample in there. Let's keep that. So now, I have access to this new sample that I just put into the MPC. I just recorded this live clap, and then now I have this new reverb clap. So there it is right there. And, of course, I have to truncate it. So let's go to trim real quick, and then let's line it up a little bit better so it's just a little bit more useful. And there it is. So I have both claps here now. And it's pretty much the same workflow for anything I'm sampling. Like if I want to sample, say, I got this shaker right here. If I want to sample it, I'll do the same thing. I'll go to my console software first and get the effects chain the way I want. Say if, for example, I want to use, I don't know, maybe 1176 or something like that on it. We're going to go ahead and change the Mike-e channel so that it is recording or sending its output to channel 3. And then in the MPC, we're going to just go ahead and go back to analog in, and we're going to go stereo right, get a test signal. Looks good. I'll record it. Okay, so now I'm going to mute the microphone, and we're just going to listen to the MPC back. Okay, so that's pretty much the workflow that I'm using for sampling. Like, I can kind of do that as much as I want to, and I do that for a lot of sources. Like, sometimes I'm using the MPC to, like, sample live recorded stuff. Sometimes I'll use things like this pocket operator, for example. I'll use that and record it directly through the microphone preamp or the Apollo directly into the MPC, because this can also generate drum tones and whatnot, and I'll use that to start recording. So a lot of different ways, but just wanted to give you some ideas on how I'm using my MPC in my studio as far as sampling goes. So that's just one example of how you can use external devices to record into the MPC. There's a couple other ways that I can show in a later video. I think that the microphone is a good use case for the MPC, because you'll find a lot of creative ways to just grab stuff in different environments and record it into the MPC. And I think it's good practice, especially if you're interested in having your own sounds and whatnot. You should always be trying to record new stuff. I'm constantly recording stuff in my setup just because it's fun and I can find new creative sounds that nobody else has. So it's a great workflow. Maybe in a next video I'll show you some ways that I'm recording synth sounds and other things into the MPC, and creating new sounds and new textures from that as well. But this is just kind of to give you an idea of some of the sampling workflow that I would use in a studio application, and even in a sound design application. But more so for my music production, I'm using these types of workflows to just be creative and stay inspired. So hopefully that cleared up some of the questions that people had about how I'm using the routing to get things in and out of the MPC. Microphone is one of the first places, but there's other ways to do things as well to get new creative results. So we'll explore that later. All right, so hopefully this helps. Until next time, I just want to tell y'all peace and God bless.